Everyone in the village thought it was just another wedding. The flowers were in place, the music floated softly through the warm air, and the bride stood quietly in the doorway, her face hidden behind the delicate veil. She looked like any other girl stepping into a new chapter of life, nervous, graceful, surrounded by whispers and glances. But no one really saw her, not for who she truly was. Guests leaned in, curious about the quiet girl marrying into one of the wealthiest families in the region. They wondered about her background, her past, and why no one had heard of her before. Some said she was lucky. Others claimed she was hiding something. Still, no one expected anything unusual until the crown arrived. It wasn't part of the ceremony. No one had seen it before, not even the groom's family. The ornate box appeared during the final blessings, carried by an older man in a dark, worn coat. He moved with purpose, ignoring the stairs, his eyes fixed only on the bride. When he reached her, he opened the box slowly, revealing something that didn't belong in a small countryside wedding: a royal crown. Not a replica, not costume jewelry, a real one. Whispers turned into gasps. The room shifted. Suddenly, the bride wasn't just a girl in white anymore. She was someone else entirely. Some recognized the crown from old photos, tied to a long-forgotten royal bloodline believed to have vanished after the war. Others stood frozen, watching the bride lower her veil and raise her head for the first time. Who was she really? Why had she kept her identity hidden until now? And why bring the crown here, at this moment, in front of these people? As the silence grew heavier and all eyes turned to her, the bride took one slow breath and stepped forward. What she said next would change everything. The bride's voice was calm, but steady enough to hush the room. "This crown," she said, holding it carefully, "belonged to my grandmother, Queen Alina of Norvalis, a name barely remembered, once whispered in history books, thought to be erased along with the Forgotten Kingdom." Some of the older guests exchanged uneasy looks. Norvalis had been a small, independent nation, dissolved decades ago after political unrest and betrayal from within its own royal circle. No heir had ever come forward, until now. She turned toward the groom, who stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. "I didn't come here to deceive anyone," she said. "But there are people watching, people who wouldn't have let this day happen if they knew the truth." Her hands trembled for the first time. "I needed to get here without being followed." The man who brought the crown remained silent, standing like a shadow behind her. His presence was unsettling, but there was something protective in the way he stayed close. Some guests whispered that he might be an old royal guard, one of the last from the Norvalis court. His face was worn with years, eyes sharp with memory, but he never left her side. Outside, the sound of faint engines began to grow. A few guests stepped toward the windows, frowning. It wasn't normal traffic, it felt coordinated. Someone muttered about black vans. Inside the hall, tension tightened like a rope. Who else knew she was here? Had her secret already reached the wrong ears? The bride took one last glance at the crown. It glimmered under the lights, silent and heavy with history. She placed it back in the box, then looked around the room, not with fear, but with quiet determination. "I need you all to listen very carefully," she said, her voice barely above a whisper now. "Because what happens next depends on what you choose to believe." And just as she spoke, the power in the building flickered, then went out completely. Gasps rippled through the room as the lights died, leaving only the soft glow of candles and phone screens. Someone knocked over a glass. A child started crying. The sudden darkness made everything feel closer, heavier, like the air had thickened. The bride didn't move. She stood still, eyes adjusting, listening. So did the man behind her. The groom stepped toward her, his voice low. "What is this, Liana? Who are you really?" His words weren't angry, just lost. The woman he thought he knew had become a stranger in front of everyone. Liana, if that was even her name, looked at him, her expression soft but unreadable. "I didn't lie," she whispered. "I just couldn't tell you until it was safe." From the back of the room, someone muttered about calling the police. Another voice, sharper, warned against it. If this is about Norvalis, then you don't know who you're dealing with. The name surfaced again, now with more weight. Some guests began to put things together. The crest on the box, a sudden blackout, the presence of unfamiliar vehicles outside. The pieces didn't make sense yet, but the feeling that something much bigger was at play settled in everyone's chest. Meanwhile, in the shadows near the catering area, a young woman named Anya, the florist's daughter, quietly slipped out through a side door. She had recognized the man who delivered the crown. Her grandfather had once worked with him years ago, back when Norvalis still had quiet allies. Anya had heard stories, ones most people thought were made up. But the man was real, and so was the threat that always came with the name Norvalis. Back inside, the guests huddled in small groups, whispering theories. Was this some political stunt? A hidden royal claim? A trap? The sound of the front doors creaking open snapped everyone to silence. Footsteps echoed, measured, slow, deliberate. Not the clumsy panic of a guest, not staff, it was someone else. Liana stepped forward slightly, shielding the crown box with her body. Her voice, when she spoke again, was steady. If they're here, we don't have much time. No one yet knew who they were, or what they wanted, but everyone could feel it. Something had just begun. The footsteps grew louder with each second, echoing down the marble corridor like a countdown. Everyone turned toward the entrance, hearts pounding, breaths shallow. A tall man in a black coat appeared in the doorway, flanked by two others in dark suits. They didn't look like police, but they moved with authority, too calm, too practiced. Their eyes scanned the room quickly, landing on the bride. Liana didn't flinch. The man behind her, the one who brought the crown, stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "They found us faster than I expected," he muttered. "We have minutes." One of the suited men spoke, voice cold and clear. "You have something that belongs to the Protectorate. Hand it over, and no one gets hurt." His eyes flicked to the box. "This isn't about history, it's about control." Guests froze. Some began backing away. Others instinctively reached for their phones, but the signal was gone, jammed. The blackout wasn't an accident, it was a setup. Liana stood straighter, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across her face. "This crown doesn't belong to you," she said. "It was stolen from my family decades ago. I'm not just here to reclaim it. I'm here to end what you started." The room was silent, tension thick as smoke. The suited man took a step forward. "You're not a queen. You're just a girl playing dress-up with dangerous pieces of the past." His words cut, but Liana didn't move. From the back of the room, Anya slipped in again, unseen. She crouched behind a pillar, clutching something tightly, a small velvet pouch her grandfather had hidden years ago. Inside it was a key, old and rusted. She didn't know what it opened, only that it was part of the Norvalis legacy, and she had a feeling it mattered now more than ever. The suited men began to spread out, slow and careful. The guests held their breath. Liana clutched the box tighter. The room was seconds away from breaking apart. Fear, truth, loyalty, they all tangled together in that moment. And then from outside came a sound none of them expected, the low hum of a helicopter, getting closer. The deep, rhythmic thump of helicopter blades grew louder, shaking the windows and sending ripples through every conversation still trapped in the guests' throats. Heads turned, panic setting in as some rushed to the windows, trying to make sense of what was unfolding. Liana's grip tightened on the crown box, her knuckles white. She whispered to the old man beside her, "That's not part of the plan, is it?" He didn't answer, he just stared at the door. The suited men paused too, exchanging glances. Their confusion was brief, but it was there. They hadn't called in backup. Whoever was in that helicopter wasn't working with them, which meant something else was in motion. Without warning, a sharp voice rang out from the hallway. "This building is now under provisional lockdown. No one leaves." A team of soldiers in unfamiliar uniforms stormed in, rifles raised, not aiming but ready. Their leader stepped forward, a woman in a dark green coat bearing an insignia no one recognized. She looked straight at Lyanna. "We've been looking for you," she said. "You're not the last heir. You're the decoy." Gasps filled the room. Lyanna went pale, but didn't move. "That's not possible," she said slowly. "My bloodline, my mother." The woman cut her off. "Your mother protected the real heir by hiding you in plain sight. You were never meant to wear that crown. You were meant to protect it." The room turned again. Eyes that once looked to Lyanna with awe now flickered with doubt, confusion. The men in suits started to react, realizing they had been chasing the wrong target the whole time. Tension cracked like glass under pressure. Anya, still crouched near the pillar, clutched the key tighter. A realization dawned on her as the pieces clicked into place. The stories her grandfather told, the hidden vault, the real heir's identity, none of it had been fantasy. Inside, the truth was spinning faster than anyone could catch up, and whoever stepped through that door next might decide the fate of an entire lost kingdom. The front doors burst open with a gust of wind and light as the helicopter finally went silent outside. All eyes turned toward the entrance, hearts racing. For a split second, no one moved. Then a figure appeared, calm, steady, and dressed not in military gear or royal silk, but in simple traveling clothes. A young woman, no older than Lyanna, stepped into the room with quiet confidence. Her face was unfamiliar to most, but something in her presence made everyone still. The woman in the green coat stepped aside and lowered her head. "Princess Elira of Norvalis," she said, "the true heir." Lyanna stood frozen, the crown box still in her hands. Her mind raced. Everything she had believed, everything she'd prepared for, was it all a lie? Elira stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "You were never meant to rule, Lyanna. You were meant to survive, to keep the line alive until the time was right." The men in suits backed away slowly, their mission unraveled in seconds. The crown was no longer just a symbol. It was a key to political legitimacy, to territory, to power. And now it clearly belonged to someone else. But even as the main conflict seemed to settle, something didn't feel finished. Anya finally stepped forward, holding the small velvet pouch. "This key," she said, her voice shaking. "My grandfather said it opens something only the true heir can access." Elira looked at her, surprised. "Where?" "In the foundation beneath the old Norvalis embassy," Anya replied. "There's a vault." He said, "The truth is inside." The woman in green nodded sharply. The vault wasn't just for royal treasures. It held sealed documents, proof of betrayal that collapsed the kingdom. If those are recovered, Norvalis may not just rise again, it may expose powerful people who still rule today. Elira reached for the crown, and for a moment, Lyanna hesitated. Then slowly she offered it up, not with bitterness, but with purpose. "Then let's finish what they started," she said. As Elira took the crown and the room exhaled, a soft buzz came from one of the soldiers' radios. A voice crackled through. "We've got movement at the vault. Someone's already down there." And just like that, the final twist unraveled. Someone had gotten there first. Elira's expression shifted the moment she heard the message from the radio. "We need to move now," she said, already turning toward the exit. Lyanna, Anya, and the older man followed without hesitation. The soldiers formed a protective ring around them as they rushed out of the hall and into the waiting vehicles. No one inside the building dared stop them. Too much had changed in too little time. The old Norvalis embassy sat abandoned on the edge of town, hidden beneath ivy and decades of silence. When they arrived, the entrance to the underground vault was already pried open. The air inside was thick with dust, the smell of rust and old secrets. Lights flickered as they descended. At the bottom of the stairs, a figure stood in the shadows, one of the suited men who had posed as part of the protectorate. He held a folder in his hands, and for a moment it seemed like a standoff. But he didn't run. Instead, he stepped forward and handed the folder to Elira. "We were ordered to destroy this," he said quietly. "But some truths don't deserve to stay buried." Inside the folder were documents, old photographs, and letters, proof that the fall of Norvalis had been orchestrated by outside powers, not just internal rebellion. Families still in control today had benefited from the collapse. With this truth, Norvalis' legacy wasn't just about royal blood anymore, it was about justice. Back at the wedding hall, news of the events began to spread. Guests who once saw a quiet bride now realized they had witnessed the return of a hidden world. Lyanna stepped back into the crowd not as a queen, but as someone who had protected something greater than herself. Anya, once just a florist's daughter, became a key to the past and a bridge to the future. Elira didn't wear the crown right away. She held it in her lap as the sun rose, quiet and thoughtful. "A crown doesn't make a ruler," she said, "but maybe it can help remind people of what was lost and what still matters." Norvalis had no throne yet, but for the first time in decades, it had hope.